Hi everyone, well done on today's game where we did well to get a draw given that we only had 9 players for the majority of the game after Jojo went down pretty early. So what I've done, as I did last time, is I've picked out a whole heap of highlights, so you just have to bear with me as I move through the video, and I will be uploading the entire game later on. However, what is really clear from the video overall is that we had actually very few shots from virtually none from general play. Where most of our shots came from is in the short corners, and the thing that we did do well is that every single short corner we got, so we got one in the first, one in the second, a stroke in the third, and 2 short corners repeat attacks in the fourth quarter, and they only got 1 in the second quarter. So we basically 4-1 in terms of short corners, and every single time we got a short corner, the shot went off. It didn't go in, obviously, but that really tells you the value of getting those short corners. All right, so you'll have to bear with me as I flick through the videos. I'll try and the sections, and I'll try and do that as efficiently as I can. And as mentioned, I will upload the entire game in its entirety if you want to watch the whole thing shortly after I upload this video. Okay, so let's switch across to the video. Okay, so we'll try and be as efficient as we can. Okay, so the first section of the video we're looking at here is in about the first 2 minutes in the first quarter. And basically the reason I picked this particular one out is just to highlight, and it's usually not the area of focus for us these days, but it's still really important to make sure we got our setup. So we get a nice 3 here. We've got someone in the gap here, but we quite obviously missing someone through here. And we have a couple of players out wide here. So ideally it's okay to have one of those players out, but we need, if we see gaps like that, we need that gap filled. So this is, okay, and we see if we roll the video and see what happens. Okay, and you'll see that what Emma does well there is starts to move across into the gap and starts to fill that gap, which is good. Okay, so the next one we'll just highlight is a much better, if we roll the video further along, is to a much better setup. Bear with me, I'll find it. Okay, so they've got, oops, nearly there. Okay, so we've got a free hit here again, and if we have a look at this setup, which is one happens just 40 seconds later, we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got a little bit of a gap there. We've probably got Haley, I think, is moving in, and we've even got a player that's out wide, which is Sarah, preventing that side pass. So that is an example of a much better setup. And you'll see that it goes to where we want. We get the turnover. Okay, so we're going to pause the video there. That was another one that I picked out. So that turnover generated a shot. And what Emma did really well in here is that the ball came in. She didn't get the shot away, but she turned and basically fired. Now, that's kind of what we want to do on a regular basis. As soon as we get an option to shoot, we shoot. Because in that particular case, yes, they picked up the free hit, but that could have easily been a short corner, or if we're lucky, sometimes it will go through the player's thing and the keeper will be unsighted on the shot. So just turning and firing, that is absolutely good. Okay, so we might slip to the next video, which is the unfortunate event. You can see I'm flipping straight there where Jojo's been hit. I'm sure you all probably want to see what happened there. If you can bear with me. That's Emma. Okay, I think it's happening about here, just so you can see what's actually happened on the particular day, which was really unfortunate. So you can see basically it's a head-on collision, and if you have a look back at it again, really, I think the reason why she's come off second best is you hasn't seen the other player coming the other way. It's just gone straight for the ball. He's not looking at the player at all, which is unfortunate, and we had a long break there. Okay, the next one we picked out was a really good passing sequence. If we can get to the right place. Again, I apologise, it takes me a while to find those things. Okay. We'll just take that back a second or two. Yeah. Okay, so the reason I picked this one out is this is a really good example of getting the ball out. So the ball's been swept out. Okay, Emma gets it in, and it goes around the back to Hayley. He sends it up. There was a gap there with Tiff to get on the end of it. She goes really nicely wide. Okay, and we'll pause it there just for a second. That's what we don't do enough of. So we have congestion in the middle of the ground, and just pulling backwards behind our body and sending it wide to a running player, and then Kath has, then has the option to send it up the line. Okay, and that's the kind of stuff we want to do regularly. And this is a continuous play rolling on. Okay, now again we got a quick shot away, but the one thing I would highlight is when running to the baseline, I think the ball was released about where the mouse was. In that particular case, we had a line of players. So if I go back to and still it up a second here where the ball's come out from Kath. Okay, so if we have a look here, we've got 1, 2, 3 in between, and we have scored goals like this before, but in that particular case, if we could go to the baseline longer with the ball on the stick, the probability of any short corner is increased, because the chances of that ball going through, I think this is very similar setup to the first goal we had in the last video, is that player is not wrong-footed at this stage. And because the ball gets sent, it's on her forestick, so she can pick it up. Okay, so going to the baseline a bit further is going to help with getting that happening. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Alright, so this next one, we've got a relatively poor defensive setup. And the reason I want to highlight it is there's gaps through there. Okay, so this player has the option to send it directly to a player out wide, and not only is there one of them, there's actually two, so that ball could easily, with a good slap, easily go through that gap and around. So that's just an example of a poor setup. Okay, now eventually the player sends it out wide, which is okay. Okay, so we just want to stop the play there, and what you see is, again, this is a good bit of play because up to this point, because we had the ball, I think, sent in on square, and then again Tiff has sent it square to Hayley. Now Hayley's then gone inside to, gone inside and onto a backstick to run the ball through. And ideally, if we go back 10 seconds in that play, the ball goes out to Hayley. Now, at that point, she has Yuri behind her available. So that's the kind of thing where you actually would want to send it straight back to Yuri and then for her to continue on her run, because she'll probably take the defender with her, leaving Yuri available to choose where she wants to send the ball. And that's one of the things we're not doing enough of, is sending it backwards to a free player for them to be able to make that decision. Even though the initial pass was very good, that's the kind of stuff where it's a simple pass straight back rather than running onto your back stick and going high. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, which, go back a second. Sorry. Okay, so the next one we have is, let's have a look, so I can't remember all my notes. Okay, I think we've got a free hit here. Tiff's got it. Good square pass. That's again what we want to see more of. Okay. Now, but if you have a look at this, so the good square pass is there, but if you have a look at where the ball's been sent, okay, you'll see there's one, so it was basically 4 players at the top of the tee. So that ball was, and we had one behind, so that ball was never going to get through. What would have been a far better choice is to go there and then to just pop it here, because you can see Hayley in the foreground there, basically available if the ball comes where my mouse is now, because that could have given us a D entry. Okay, so when you're looking square, what you want to try and do is, before you're receiving the ball, is having a bit of a glance around about where players are, and also if you're nearby, is calling right if there's an option. So if you're looking for these sort of gaps where the player's not yet there, but they can run in and potentially take a shot on goal. Okay, so let's go to the next one, which is okay, so this one is okay, so we've got a free hit on the sideline. If we roll the tape for a second. Okay, so the ball. Okay, so we're going to pause there. Okay, so we've hit a ball. Okay, Kath's turn. She's away. Fantastic. But if we go back and roll back and have a look at some of the video just for a second. Okay, just to look at what could have happened. So in that particular case, and so we had a few seconds there where Yuri would have been lining up, ready to take the hit, and we have 2 players here. They have a reasonable defence set up where they have 3 in front. The other players here are covered. Now, the thing that you want to think about, and again I apologise for Hayley because I've done kind of 2 in a row for her, is we want to make sure that we think about what we're doing in terms of our positioning. So in that particular case, what Hayley could have easily done is actually gone backwards into the ground as an option. And that would have been quite important, because if she'd gone backwards, the player most likely would have followed her, leaving the option for the ball to come through to Kath with less pressure. Because if you see, that player is now, that player that was with Hayley is the one that is involved in the play and is creating that extra bit of pressure. Whereas if Hayley had moved out, the ball could have gone out to her, or alternatively into Kath, and would have provided Kath with more space. So try and think about your positioning. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one, which is way into the future. Let's see. Okay, so we'll roll the tape. So this is a 16, I think. Okay, so if we have a look at the tape, and if we just go back a few seconds. Okay, so if we have a look at that pass at the moment, and it is hard to say from this camera, the angle the camera's on, but basically we have a bit of a play on, I think, from Marcia, I think it is, sending the ball. I think that's Kate out wide, and so that's probably not the best option available because we have two players in play, and you're sending a pass a fair distance where it's going to be difficult to get it through. What you might want to consider as an alternative with your free hits, which we very rarely do, is when you do have your 16 in this location, is to actually move to the right, just carry the ball 1 or 2 steps, and then send it up because we have a gap here that's available, and send it up through the centre there. Okay, you would never know exactly where the players would have moved, but that was probably not a high probability of getting through, and we just really want to try and concentrate when we have ball in hand, trying to control it. And the other option could have been to go backwards to Yuri, for example, because there is space. But the one thing with Yuri when you go all the way back is to just make sure that you're nice and deep in the ground to give yourself plenty of time. Okay, so we're on to page 2 of my notes. Okay, let's see. Okay, so I'm going to roll the tape. So this is a short corner. This is one of the short corners we got. I think this was in period 2. So this is when we weren't doing so well in the game. So we'll let the video roll for a second. Okay, so again, we got our shot away. Now, if we have a look at the video, okay, with the strike, okay, we've actually done a lot right here, okay. But the one thing I'd say, so the shot's gone in. It's close to one of the posts. Is okay when the shot comes. Okay, Kate's in perfect position here. Okay, but if we have a look at the body position, there's no contact made because we're using an upright stick. So really what we want to try and do is if we just, if we go 1, 2, 3 flat stick, deflecting in as a potential even before the ball is struck, then you have the option to get the deflection in. So just try and make sure if you're in that front D, is try and get your sticks flat on the ground, because often you don't have, if Dom has a big hit, we don't have often the time to react to the shot, and you'll see that there is a little gap in between, so just that could have easily gone in. Okay, so just make sure we're practicing at training what we're practicing training we're doing in the game. Okay, go to the next one, which is way into the future. Okay, so I've got my notes for this one. Is an example, a really good example of defensive setup. Okay, so I think they've got the free hit there. Okay, and you'll see that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we've got players inside. So that's good positioning there, Marcia, because you don't need to mark that player. So just filling the space, and if they want to come into the danger zone. So that's a really nice looking setup. So we'll roll a tape. Let's see what happens. So if we pause it there, what's really good about that little play, there's nothing spectacular that's done by any given player, but what you see is that one after another, there's tackle after tackle after tackle. Basically the ball gets passed on, they turn around, there's a player there. Ball gets out, another player gets it, then there's players behind. It's just one after another, and that's really the advantage of that, having that many players around the patch. So that was just a really good example of a good setup by everyone. Okay, so we'll jump forward. This one's a few minutes into the future. Okay. Let's have a look. Let's roll the play. Okay, so I'm just going to roll that back 10 seconds. Just have 10 or 15 seconds. Okay, so sorry, we didn't get the video quite right. Yeah. Okay, so it's Kath with the free hit. She drags it wide. Okay. She pushes to the baseline, which is what we were mentioning was good. She gets the shot across, and Tiff gets through and gets the shot away. Okay, resulting in I think it's a short corner. Okay, so that example there of is what we mentioned previously with particularly Kath, who does it a lot. When you're entering, going right to the baseline, which is what you've done in that particular case. And then if we have a look what we've done here with Tiff, is if you have the inclination when you have the ball, so right now we have Tiff right at the top there, the inclination you think you can take the player on. If you're that close to the top of the D, because if you beat that player, the shot can go off. So that's an example of where you should take on a player. And so you've got through, fantastic, bang. And that's really good, really well done. Okay, so that's an example of where you should take on a player. Okay, we've got a couple of, unfortunately, Tiff, I've got some ones coming up where you shouldn't have taken on a player, but that's okay, that's part of life. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. Okay, so we have here an example of good back passing. Okay, so we've got the free hit here. Okay, I think it's Tiff again. Okay, ball goes wide, fantastic. And ball gets out nice and wide. And then the trees get involved. Okay, so that's an example of what we didn't do a great deal. Ball goes around and then across. But you can see how much, if we go back to the original setup, before the hit was taken, okay, you can see the bulk of their defence is in that central area. Okay, so by the end of this piece of play, if we play it again, you can see you're spreading the entire team, and we just need to do a lot more of that. Now, we didn't quite execute it, but you can see if that was an ideal pass, then there's this gap to enter into. Okay, but the one thing that hasn't happened, also in having said that if there is an ideal pass, the couple of players that were here need to move in to receive the ball. Okay, but that's an example of a good series of back passes. Okay, so here's another example. Let's go with this one. We'll just go a step or two behind. Okay, so we'll roll the footage for this one. Okay, so the reason I highlighted this one, which may not be overly obvious because it was a pretty benign set of play. We'll go back to the original free hit. Okay, so we have the free hit here. Okay, and even just a step further. Okay. Okay, so we have Dom ready to go, just about ready to go. Now, the thing that was done really well here, but it didn't result in anything, was if you have a look here, we have a player in isolation, which I think is Yuri. She's by herself, and we have a couple of players that if that ball was sent directly across, then that player would have potentially been able to put pressure on. Now, if you have a look at the out wide thing, which is not where the ball goes in this particular example, this is a really good example of what you should be doing to create passing lanes for other players. So now, if we pause the video, that Tiff is off leading, saying, "Gimme, gimme, gimme." That ball, though it didn't go there, could have easily gone there and opened up a space for Yuri to be able to enter in a controlled manner into the D. So that's the sort of thing that is pretty innocuous that you do in games that is really going to do a lot for another player in terms of providing options and space. And so that's a really good example, though the ball didn't even go to Yuri, and that it went straight into, it actually went to the lead. That's an example of that, the kind of thing that you can be thinking about how you're doing, which will often not go unnoticed by other players, but is really an excellent example of creating gaps. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, and we'll go back a video or two, second or two. Okay, so let's roll the footage. So the free hit is just here where the ball is. I don't even know why I've highlighted that one, to be honest. I'm going to skip over that one because I don't know why I highlighted it. Okay, so we'll go to the next one. There's only a couple more to go. Okay, so we have the free hit out wide here. Okay. Okay, so that's an example of there's a lot of players in front, and the reason I picked that one out, I think, is because we have the opportunity, if Yuri steps up a little bit, to go around the back. So we need to try and, as was sort of sounding like a broken record, but we want to create more of these sorts of options. Okay, so if we can, so just consider those back passes where you disengage the defence and then you're able to use players out wide to carry the ball up uncontested is more of what we want to do. Okay, 60. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, so roll it here. Okay, so this one I just picked out. I've got my notes is just a good passing sequence, a nicely well put together passing sequence by players, one after another. So there's first pass, second pass, then another good pass inside, and so there's 4 or 5 of them. Now, if we have a look at that, which is almost a zigzag pattern up the ground, that's a really good example of the stuff we are practicing at training, where if you're the player that's receiving the ball on the inside of the ground doesn't have vision over here, but they do have a lot of vision over there, so just going to immediately getting rid of the ball up in a zigzag fashion makes it difficult for their defence to actually pick it up. So it's just an example of where we put 5, 6, 7 passes together and done it quite well. Okay, next one. It's only 3 or 4 more. Okay, so we'll go back a few seconds. Okay, there we go. Okay, so here's an example here of the things we've been talking about quite a lot. So we have a free hit here. We have Kath in the middle with the ball. And we even go back a few more steps. Okay, so if we roll the footage now, and good pass out to Tiff, good lead by Tiff. And then gets the ball in across the D. So that's as I said, that's sort of the value of that sort of square pass is that there is options for the player to send the ball as they see fit. So that's a good example. Oops, we've gone too far. Okay, so I'll roll the footage there. So this is okay, I might go back. Sorry, I'm going to go back a step further. Okay, so Kath has the free hit at the top as a long corner, I think it is. Now there's really not many options. There's a player here, player here, player here, player there, player there. So there's really not a lot of space there at this point in time. Now if you have a look, there's a player out wide, so which is Yuri again. Trying to send those balls out wide, backwards and out into space is often really good, particularly when they're well set up around the D. Because you've obviously also got the keeper behind them, so we just need to do a bit more of that sort of thing. All right, so we're on to the last one. Okay, so this is an example of stuff that was done really well by Sarah. Okay, so as you might remember at halftime, we gave Sarah the job of going backwards and sitting behind the defence and blocking up the defence. So she's out nice and deep here, sitting back with the defence in line. And this is an example of just good positioning in general. Okay, so if we go back 10 seconds again, so maybe even a little bit further. Okay, so if we just roll the tape again and we'll pause it. Okay, so they're going square, it's moving cross, anticipating right, the ball's going there. There's no real risk. There's 1 on 3 at this point in time, and there's players coming across to cover that player in the centre. Okay. So at this point, the thing that she's doing well, this is more so critical for defence, is if you know you're outnumbered, which we have 2 there that she can see in her eye line, is she's not running up and trying to tackle the ball immediately. She's waiting for the player to come, so you're kind of forcing the player to make the mistake, just jogging back. Okay, now we need to make the tackle. And so that player has run themselves into trouble, and that's actually something we do quite a lot of. So that player could have easily sent the ball square more quickly, and that's one of the things we need to do more frequently ourselves. But the thing that Sarah's done quite well there is moving across, not panicking, just rolling back and then waiting for the opportunity to tackle. Okay, and I think the ball comes out from there. Okay, so that was the last one I had on my notepads, I think. So hang on, I'll just check before we close out the video. Yes, it was. All right. Okay, so I guess the main messages from all of that sort of stuff, and all, good plays and bad plays and all that sort of thing. And Tiff, I didn't find that one. There was one in there somewhere, but basically, just is to make sure you're using the options early and as quickly as you can, using back options to disengage the defence, and also really working on when you are penetrating the circle, get the shot away quickly, or if you're penetrating, go to the baseline, hold the ball along the baseline. And try and generate those short corners, because as I said, if you do watch the whole video and watch each and every one of the short corners that we got, every single one of them was a shot on goal. It was actually, ball came out, ball went back in, keeper had to make the save. Whereas the options that we had on a playing during the game and free play, there were very few actual shots on goal. Anyway, well done, guys. If you want to watch the full video, just go to the channel, and I'll send out the links shortly. Cheers.